He married a wealthy older woman purely for money, but the unexpected lesson he learned along the way turned his entire life upside down and changed him forever. Hello, welcome everyone. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Rodrigo, a young man whose ambition knew no bounds, found himself at a moral crossroads. His mind was obsessed with the idea of reaching the top of the social pyramid, no matter the cost. That's when Isabel appeared on his path, an older woman, wealthy, and the widow of a businessman whose fortune still echoed whispers of power in high society. Rodrigo saw in Isabel a golden opportunity, a chance not only to secure a comfortable future, but also to gain the recognition he had always sought. He knew that by marrying her, he could take the leap he had always desired, even if it meant sacrificing his feelings and diving into a cold marriage where love was replaced by an unspoken contract of convenience. Their first meeting was anything but ordinary. Isabel, with her discreet elegance and a gaze that seemed to see beyond appearances, captivated Rodrigo in a way he hadn't anticipated. She wasn't just a wealthy, lonely woman. There was something about her manner, her words, that left Rodrigo intrigued. Even knowing that his intentions were far from pure, Rodrigo couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and curiosity for the woman who, in a way, was about to become part of his life. However, he didn't let slip the true reason for his interest. In that moment, suspense hung in the air, for both knew they were playing a dangerous game. Isabel, on her part, was not a naive woman. Life had already taught her harsh lessons, and she had learned to discern the true intentions of the people around her. When Rodrigo courted her, Isabel knew there was something more than simple affection, yet her loneliness spoke louder, and the need to have someone by her side, someone with whom she could share her life, made her accept the marriage proposal. She didn't expect a fairy tale, but something within her whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, this marriage could bring her more than she imagined. Isabel saw in Rodrigo a spark of mystery and a challenge she was willing to face. As time passed, Rodrigo and Isabel grew closer, but not in the way he had planned. Isabel, with her shrewdness and deep conversations, began to capture Rodrigo's attention in a way he hadn't expected. What was supposed to be just a marriage of convenience was turning into something more complex and enigmatic. Rodrigo found himself increasingly drawn to the stories Isabel shared, tales of survival, dangers she had faced, and the challenges life had imposed on her. He started to see Isabel not just as a means to an end, but as a woman of courage, someone who had survived adversity with a dignity he couldn't ignore. Amidst these encounters, there were moments when Rodrigo found himself laughing at Isabel's jokes, feeling a lightness he hadn't expected to find in this marriage. He began to realize that Isabel, despite all her sophistication and wealth, was a person with a surprising sense of humor, capable of turning tense situations into moments of sincere laughter. Rodrigo found himself torn between his growing admiration for Isabel and his initial ambition. The mystery of how Isabel managed to keep him intrigued, despite his own plans, was becoming an increasingly difficult enigma to solve. As their coexistence intensified, Rodrigo couldn't help but compare Isabel with others he had known throughout his life. He realized that, unlike many who allowed themselves to be corrupted by power and wealth, Isabel maintained an integrity he was beginning to admire. It was as if she, in some way, was immune to the poison of unbridled ambition that he himself carried. This contrast made Rodrigo begin to question his own values and his true intentions. It was becoming increasingly clear that Isabel was an extraordinary woman, and this only heightened the suspense surrounding his real motivations. Rodrigo found himself in a dilemma. On one hand, he wanted to stick to his original plan, marry Isabel, and secure the financial safety he had always desired. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the fact that Isabel was starting to win his affection in a way that went beyond simple admiration for her wealth. He felt an internal tension, as if something within him was on the verge of changing, but he still couldn't define what it was. The marriage, which initially seemed like an easy path to success, was beginning to reveal itself as full of unexpected twists and Rodrigo realized that he might be venturing into more dangerous territory than he had anticipated. Deep down, Rodrigo knew he was playing with fire. Isabel was an intelligent woman, and he was fully aware that she could discover his true intentions at any moment. But at the same time, he couldn't deny the fact that he was beginning to enjoy her company, her conversations, and the way she could read his soul without saying a word. This unexpected closeness created constant suspense, as Rodrigo wondered when and if Isabel would confront him about his intentions. He was beginning to understand that the real danger wasn't just in being discovered, but in allowing himself to develop feelings he hadn't planned on. Days passed, and with them, Rodrigo found himself more and more immersed in his new life alongside Isabel. He began to realize that, instead of being just a passive spectator of his own social ascent, he was becoming an active participant in Isabel's life. She challenged him, made him think, and placed him in situations he had never imagined facing. Living with Isabel was shaping Rodrigo in ways he hadn't expected, making him question his own choices and, more importantly, his own ambitions. Life with Isabel was becoming a constant challenge, a twist he hadn't foreseen. The marriage, which at first seemed to be just a convenient arrangement, was beginning to reveal deeper and more complex layers. Rodrigo found himself in the midst of an emotional drama he hadn't expected to experience, where his feelings for Isabel mixed with his ambitions, creating a constant intrigue within himself. He knew he had to make a decision, continue with his original plan, or allow the unexpected to take over his life. The mystery surrounding Isabel's true feelings also left him unsettled. Did she really know his intentions from the beginning? And if she did, why had she accepted the marriage? Isabel, on the other hand, watched Rodrigo with a keen eye but never revealed what she truly thought. She let the suspense unfold, allowing Rodrigo to dive into his own thoughts and doubts. There was a certain wisdom in her approach, a way of handling the situation that made Rodrigo feel increasingly involved. Isabel knew that for the marriage to work, it would take more than just money and convenience. Rodrigo needed to see beyond his own ambitions, and she was willing to give him the time needed for that. This was the enigma Rodrigo needed to decipher. Rodrigo's feelings for Isabel were becoming increasingly confused. He knew that at some point he would have to confront the truth about his intentions, but the closeness with Isabel made this task more difficult than he had imagined. Each day, he discovered a new facet of her, a new detail that made him admire her strength and courage even more. The tension between what he wanted to achieve and what he was actually beginning to feel for Isabel grew with each moment, creating an internal drama he could no longer ignore. Rodrigo was about to face a challenge greater than any other he had ever faced. Finally, Rodrigo realized that he could no longer run from his own feelings. The closeness with Isabel had forced him to confront truths about himself that he had always avoided. He knew that the marriage of convenience he had planned was turning into something much more complex and profound. Isabel, with her patience and wisdom, had become a crucial part of his life, and he knew he needed to make a decision. Would he stick to his original plans, ignoring what he was beginning to feel, or would he allow the unexpected to guide his path? The answer wouldn't be easy, but he knew that Isabel was waiting, patiently for the moment when he would finally reveal the truth, both to her and to himself. And so, the marriage that began with ulterior motives transformed into an emotional enigma, where Rodrigo needed to decipher his own feelings before taking the next step. He knew that time was running out and that Isabel, with her silent wisdom, was waiting for him to make the right decision. But what he didn't yet know was that Isabel also held a secret, a revelation that would change everything. The suspense was in the air, and the true twist was yet to come, waiting for just the right moment to reveal itself. The marriage of convenience was only the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. As time went by, Rodrigo found himself drawn closer to Isabel in ways he had never anticipated. What started as a calculated move to secure his future was evolving into something much more intricate. Isabel, with her sharp mind and deep sense of compassion, began to reveal sides of herself that caught Rodrigo off guard. He discovered a woman who, despite her wealth and status, had a profound understanding of life's struggles. She had faced hardships that had forged her into a resilient, wise soul, and these stories began to resonate with Rodrigo, stirring something within him that he couldn't quite name. Rodrigo couldn't help but notice how Isabel carried herself with a quiet strength, a trait he hadn't expected from someone of her background. Her laughter was genuine, her advice insightful, and her presence increasingly comforting. It was as if she had the ability to turn even the most mundane moments into something meaningful. Rodrigo started to see her not just as a stepping stone to his ambitions, but as a person of depth and character, someone who had lived through challenges that made his own seem trivial. This newfound respect for Isabel began to blur the lines between his original intentions and the emotions that were now surfacing. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Isabel shared a story from her past, a moment that had defined her resilience. She spoke of a time when everything she held dear seemed to be slipping away, yet she managed to hold on with sheer willpower. Her voice was steady, but Rodrigo could sense the underlying pain and strength in her words. This revelation stirred something in him, a mixture of admiration and guilt. He realized that beneath the facade of wealth and privilege, Isabel had endured more than he had ever imagined. The suspense of what else she might reveal kept Rodrigo on edge, making him question how much more there was to learn about the woman he thought he had figured out. Rodrigo found himself drawn into these conversations, not out of obligation, but out of genuine interest. Isabel's life was a tapestry of survival, courage, and resilience, woven together with threads of both pain and triumph. Each story she shared seemed to peel back another layer of her complex personality, leaving Rodrigo both intrigued and unsettled. He had entered this marriage with clear intentions, but now those intentions were being overshadowed by the respect and curiosity growing within him. The tension between his original plans and these newfound emotions was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. As the days turned into weeks, Rodrigo began to notice subtle changes in his behavior. He found himself looking forward to their evening talks, eager to hear more about Isabel's past, her thoughts on life and her wisdom born from experience. The ambition that once drove him to manipulate his way into her life was slowly being replaced by a genuine connection. This unexpected closeness was unsettling. It was not part of his plan, but Rodrigo couldn't deny the pull he felt towards Isabel, a pull that was rooted not in her wealth, but in the person she was revealing herself to be. The mystery of who Isabel truly was kept him captivated. Isabel, on the other hand, seemed to sense this shift in Rodrigo. She didn't say anything, but her knowing smile and the way she looked at him suggested that she understood more than she let on. She was patient, allowing Rodrigo to come to his own realizations in his own time. It was as if she was waiting for him to see her, not just as a wealthy widow, but as a partner, an equal, someone who had lived through the kind of experiences that money couldn't erase. The suspense of what she might do next, how she might respond to this changing dynamic, kept Rodrigo on his toes, making every interaction between them charged with unspoken tension. One evening, after a particularly revealing conversation, Rodrigo found himself alone in his study, reflecting on what Isabel had shared. The stories of her past were not just tales of survival. They were lessons in resilience, courage, and the strength to overcome adversity. Rodrigo realized that he had never truly appreciated what it meant to endure such hardships and come out stronger on the other side. Isabel's life was a testament to the kind of strength that money couldn't buy, and this realization made him question everything he thought he knew about power and success. The intrigue of what he might discover next kept him restless. The more time he spent with Isabel, the more Rodrigo began to see the cracks in his own character. He had always prided himself on his cunning and ambition, but now, faced with Isabel's quiet strength, those traits seemed shallow and insignificant. Rodrigo started to wonder if he had been wrong all along, if perhaps true power wasn't about wealth or social standing, but about the ability to face life's challenges with grace and integrity. The drama unfolding within him was intense, as he struggled to reconcile his original motives with the growing respect and admiration he felt for Isabel. The suspense of his own transformation was palpable. Rodrigo's internal conflict was mirrored in his interactions with Isabel. He found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't anticipated, not because of what she could offer him financially, but because of the person she was. The tension between them was no longer about their differing social standings, but about the unspoken understanding that was developing between them. Rodrigo was beginning to see Isabel not as a means to an end, but as someone he genuinely cared about. The suspense of what this realization meant for their future hung over him like a dark cloud, making every decision feel weighty and consequential. Isabel's patience with Rodrigo was both comforting and unsettling. She never pushed him to reveal his thoughts or feelings, but there was a quiet expectation in her demeanor that suggested she knew more than she let on. Rodrigo wondered if she had always known that he would reach this point, that his ambition would eventually give way to something deeper. The mystery of Isabel's true intentions, of whether she had always planned for this outcome, kept Rodrigo constantly guessing, adding an extra layer of tension to their relationship. He knew that he was at a crossroads, but he wasn't sure which path to take. The closer Rodrigo got to Isabel, the more he realized how much he had underestimated her. She was not just a wealthy widow, she was a woman of substance, someone who had faced life's challenges head-on and emerged stronger for it. This realization shook Rodrigo to his core, making him question everything he thought he knew about life, love, and success. The suspense of what he might discover next, both about Isabel and about himself, kept him on edge, driving him to seek answers to questions he hadn't even known he had. The stakes were higher than ever, and Rodrigo knew that his next move would be crucial. As Rodrigo grappled with his changing feelings, he began to see Isabel in a new light. She was no longer just a means to an end, but someone who had the potential to change his life in ways he hadn't anticipated. The tension between them was no longer just about their marriage of convenience, it was about the unspoken connection that was growing between them, a connection that was becoming harder to ignore with each passing day. Rodrigo knew that he was on the brink of a revelation, but what that revelation would be, he couldn't yet say. The suspense of what lay ahead was both exhilarating and terrifying, and so, the life that Rodrigo had planned with cold calculation was unraveling before his eyes. The unexpected closeness with Isabel had thrown his plans into disarray, leaving him uncertain of what the future held. The suspense of what would happen next, of how their relationship would evolve, was almost too much to bear. Rodrigo knew that he was standing on the edge of a precipice, and the next step he took would determine the course of his life. The only question was, would he take the leap into the unknown, or would he retreat back to the safety of his original plan? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. Rodrigo believed he was in control of the situation, confident that his charm and cunning had kept Isabel unaware of his true motives. He saw their marriage as a well-executed plan, a means to secure the wealth and status he craved. But one evening, as they sat in the dimly lit living room, Isabel, with a calm and almost disarming demeanor, revealed that she had known about his intentions from the very beginning. Her voice was steady, without a hint of anger or resentment, as she admitted that she understood why he had pursued her. The revelation left Rodrigo stunned, as the ground beneath him seemed to shift, leaving him grappling with the realization that his secret was not so secret after all. Isabel continued, explaining that she had accepted the marriage not out of naivety, but because she saw potential in Rodrigo. She had hoped that, given time, he might come to see beyond his ambitions and recognize the deeper values in life, values that she herself held dear. Isabel's words were like a mirror, reflecting back at Rodrigo the shallow nature of his pursuits. The suspense in her revelation was palpable as Rodrigo tried to process the fact that Isabel had been aware all along, yet chose to stay silent, allowing him to navigate his path, perhaps waiting for him to realize the emptiness of his quest for wealth. As Isabel spoke, Rodrigo could see the wisdom in her eyes, a wisdom born from years of experience and a life filled with its own share of challenges. She was not angry or bitter. Instead, she seemed almost sad for him, as if she knew that he had been chasing shadows, missing out on the true essence of life. Rodrigo felt a mix of emotions, guilt, confusion, and a growing sense of respect for the woman he had underestimated. The revelation was not just about her knowledge of his plans, but also about the depth of her understanding of human nature. It was a turning point, a moment where Rodrigo had to confront not only his actions, but the very motivations that had driven him to this point. The silence that followed Isabel's confession was thick with tension. Rodrigo felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he had never felt before. For the first time, he realized that his carefully constructed facade had been transparent all along. Isabel's acceptance of him, despite knowing his intentions, puzzled him. Why had she gone along with it? Why hadn't she confronted him sooner? These questions raced through his mind, creating a whirlwind of emotions. The mystery of Isabel's motivations added a new layer of complexity to their relationship, leaving Rodrigo to ponder what her true intentions might be. Isabel's revelation also brought with it a challenge for Rodrigo to reflect on his life, his goals, and what he truly wanted. She had given him a chance not to manipulate or deceive, but to grow and change. The ball was in his court now, and the suspense of what he would do next hung in the air. Rodrigo realized that this was a pivotal moment, one that could either lead to his redemption or his downfall. The stakes had never been higher, and the pressure to make the right choice weighed heavily on him. He could no longer hide behind his ambition. The time had come to face the truth. Rodrigo's mind raced as he tried to piece together the implications of Isabel's words. She had seen something in him that even he had failed to recognize, a potential for change, for growth. This realization shook him to his core. For so long, he had believed that his worth was tied to his success, to the wealth and status he could attain. But now, Isabel was offering him a different perspective, one that valued integrity, kindness, and resilience over material gain. The tension between his old beliefs and this new understanding was almost unbearable, as Rodrigo struggled to reconcile the two. As the night wore on, Rodrigo found himself unable to sleep, his thoughts consumed by Isabel's revelation. He had spent so much time crafting a persona that he thought would win him the life he wanted, but now he realized that persona was hollow, built on false pretenses. Isabel's words had struck a chord deep within him, awakening a sense of introspection he had long buried. The drama of the situation was not lost on him. He was at a crossroads, with one path leading to continued deception and the other to an uncertain yet possibly more fulfilling future. The choice was his, but the pressure to choose wisely was immense. Isabel's patience with Rodrigo was both a blessing and a burden. She had laid her cards on the table, revealing her knowledge of his intentions, but she had not demanded anything from him in return. This left Rodrigo with the responsibility of deciding his own fate. The suspense of what he would do next was almost overwhelming. Would he continue down the path of ambition, using Isabel as a means to an end? Or would he take this opportunity to change, to become the man Isabel seemed to believe he could be? The uncertainty gnawed at him as he weighed his options, each one fraught with its own risks and rewards. The following days were filled with tension as Rodrigo tried to navigate his way through the new dynamics of his relationship with Isabel. He found himself more introspective than ever before, questioning the choices he had made and the future he had envisioned. Isabel, for her part, remained calm and supportive, never pressuring him, but always there with a kind word or a gentle nudge. The suspense of what lay ahead for them was ever present, as Rodrigo grappled with the realization that his life could take a very different direction depending on the decisions he made in the coming days. Rodrigo's internal conflict was mirrored in his interactions with Isabel. He was no longer sure how to act around her. Should he continue with his original plan, or should he open himself up to the possibility of something more genuine? The tension between his desire for wealth and his growing respect for Isabel was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Each moment spent with her only deepened his confusion, as he found himself drawn to her not just for what she represented in terms of financial security, but for who she was as a person. The suspense of where this would lead kept Rodrigo on edge, unable to predict the outcome of his own story. Isabel's revelation had changed everything. Rodrigo could no longer see her as just a wealthy widow. She was a woman of depth, with a keen understanding of human nature, and a heart full of compassion. The mystery of why she had chosen to stay with him, despite knowing his true intentions, was something he couldn't shake. It haunted him, making him question his own worth and his place in her life. The drama of their situation was unfolding in ways he hadn't anticipated, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Rodrigo knew that the decisions he made in the coming days would determine not just his future, but the nature of his relationship with Isabel. As Rodrigo stood at this crossroads, he realized that he had a choice to make. He could continue on his current path, using Isabel for his own gain, or he could embrace the possibility of change, of becoming the person Isabel seemed to believe he could be. The suspense of what lay ahead was almost too much to bear as Rodrigo grappled with the weight of his decision. He knew that whatever choice he made would have far-reaching consequences, not just for him, but for Isabel as well. The revelation had set the stage for a new chapter in their lives, and Rodrigo could only hope that he would find the courage to make the right decision. And so, with the truth laid bare, Rodrigo faced the most important decision of his life. The path ahead was unclear, filled with uncertainty and potential pitfalls. But as he looked into Isabel's eyes, he saw a flicker of hope, a belief that he could be more than just a man driven by ambition. The suspense of what the future held was both thrilling and terrifying, as Rodrigo prepared to take the next step in his journey. The stage was set, the players in position, and the final act was about to begin. What would Rodrigo choose? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. Isabel's revelation had set in motion a profound internal shift within Rodrigo. The confidence he once had in his pursuit of wealth and status was now clouded by doubt and introspection. As he pondered her words, he began to see that the life he had been chasing was hollow, devoid of the true fulfillment he secretly longed for. The wisdom in Isabel's eyes haunted him, her quiet patience urging him to look deeper into himself. It was as if she had placed a mirror before him, forcing him to confront the shallowness of his ambitions and the flaws in his character. The suspense of his own transformation was as intense as any drama he had ever known. Rodrigo found himself increasingly drawn to Isabel's company, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to understand the depth of her character. The lessons she had imparted, often through simple stories or subtle gestures, began to resonate with him in ways he had never anticipated. He realized that Isabel was not just a wealthy widow, but a woman who had mastered the art of resilience, who had faced life's challenges with grace and dignity. This realization stirred something deep within Rodrigo, a yearning to become a better person, to rise above the superficial desires that had once driven him. The tension between who he was and who he could become grew with each passing day. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden, Isabel pointed out a rosebush that had been struggling to bloom. She explained how she had nurtured it, giving it time, care, and attention until it finally blossomed. "Sometimes," she said softly, "things need time to grow. They may look weak on the surface, but with patience they can become something beautiful." Rodrigo knew that Isabel wasn't just talking about the roses. She was talking about him. The metaphor was not lost on him, and he felt a pang of guilt for how he had initially approached their marriage. The suspense of whether he could live up to her expectations weighed heavily on him. As days turned into weeks, Rodrigo began to adopt a different approach to his life. He started to let go of his obsession with money and status, focusing instead on becoming a man of integrity and substance. He took on responsibilities he had previously avoided, helping Isabel with the management of her estate and showing genuine interest in the welfare of those around him. These changes did not happen overnight, and Rodrigo struggled with his old habits and temptations. But with each small victory, he felt a sense of fulfillment that had eluded him in his previous pursuits. The challenge of self-improvement was daunting, but Rodrigo found himself increasingly committed to the journey. Isabel observed these changes with quiet satisfaction. She never praised him overtly, but her approving nods and the warmth in her eyes told Rodrigo that she noticed and appreciated his efforts. This subtle encouragement fueled his determination to continue on this new path. The tension between his old self and the man he was becoming created an ongoing drama in his life, where every decision felt like a step toward either redemption or relapse. Rodrigo knew that the stakes were high, not just for his own future, but for the future of his relationship with Isabel. The suspense of what the outcome would be kept him on edge, pushing him to strive for the best version of himself. Rodrigo's transformation wasn't without its setbacks. There were moments when he felt the pull of his old life, the temptation to return to the pursuit of wealth at any cost. But each time, he remembered Isabel's words, the look in her eyes when she revealed she had known his intentions all along. The drama of his internal conflict was a constant presence, a reminder that change was not easy, but necessary. Rodrigo realized that he had to confront not only his actions, but the motivations behind them. He had to learn to value the things that truly mattered: integrity, kindness, and the ability to rise above his own shortcomings. As he continued on this path of self-discovery, Rodrigo found that his relationship with Isabel deepened in unexpected ways. What had once been a marriage of convenience was slowly transforming into a partnership based on mutual respect and admiration. Rodrigo began to see Isabel not just as a means to an end, but as a mentor, a guide who was helping him navigate the complexities of life. The suspense of where this relationship would lead added an emotional depth to their interactions, making every conversation, every shared moment, feel like a step towards something more profound. Rodrigo knew that he was changing, but he wasn't sure where this change would ultimately take him. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, Rodrigo found himself sitting alone, reflecting on the journey he had embarked upon. He thought about the man he had been when he first met Isabel, driven by greed and ambition, and the man he was becoming, someone who valued honesty, integrity, and the wisdom that came from life's experiences. The tension between these two identities was almost palpable as Rodrigo grappled with the realization that he was in the midst of a transformation that could define the rest of his life. The suspense of what the future held was both exhilarating and terrifying as Rodrigo faced the unknown with a mixture of hope and fear. Isabel, for her part, continued to guide Rodrigo with her quiet wisdom. She never pushed him, never demanded more than he was willing to give, but her presence was a constant reminder of the standards he was trying to live up to. The suspense of whether he would succeed or fall back into his old ways was always there, a shadow that followed him through each day. But with Isabel by his side, Rodrigo felt a strength he hadn't known he possessed. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he was beginning to believe that with time and effort, he could become the man Isabel seemed to believe he could be. The transformation that Rodrigo was undergoing wasn't just about changing his behavior. It was about changing his mindset, his values, and his understanding of what truly mattered in life. This was no easy task, and Rodrigo often found himself wrestling with doubts and fears. But each time he felt himself slipping, Isabel was there, not with words of admonition, but with a quiet reassurance that gave him the courage to keep going. The suspense of what lay ahead, of whether he could truly leave his old self behind, kept Rodrigo in a constant state of reflection and self-examination. And so, Rodrigo's journey of transformation continued, marked by moments of triumph and moments of doubt. The path he was on was uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles, but it was also a path that promised something greater than the wealth and status he had once pursued. The suspense of what the future held for him and Isabel was a constant presence, urging him to keep moving forward, to keep striving for something better. Rodrigo knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in his life, he felt that it was a road worth traveling. The final act of his transformation was yet to come, and Rodrigo was determined to see it through no matter what it took. Determined to redeem himself, Rodrigo embarked on a journey of change that was both challenging and deeply transformative. He knew that merely acknowledging his past mistakes wasn't enough. He needed to take concrete steps to become the man Isabel deserved. Rodrigo began by setting aside his selfish ambitions and focusing on what truly mattered, building a relationship based on trust, respect, and genuine affection. This wasn't an easy process, as his old habits and instincts often threatened to pull him back into his former ways. However, with each passing day, he found strength in the growing bond between him and Isabel, a bond that was slowly but surely changing the course of his life. Rodrigo's first step towards rebuilding his life was to take on responsibilities that he had previously ignored or avoided. He began to play a more active role in managing Isabel's estate, learning the intricacies of the business she had built with her late husband. This was more than just a task. It was a way for Rodrigo to show Isabel that he was committed to being a true partner, not just in name, but in action. The process was filled with challenges, as Rodrigo struggled to understand the complexities of the business world, but he persevered. The suspense of whether he could rise to the occasion kept him motivated, pushing him to learn and grow. As Rodrigo immersed himself in his new responsibilities, he noticed a shift in how others perceived him. Those who had once viewed him with suspicion or disdain began to see a different side of him, a man who was willing to work hard, who was genuinely invested in the success of the estate and the well-being of those who depended on it. This change in perception was not immediate, nor was it universal, but it was a start. Rodrigo understood that trust wasn't something that could be demanded. It had to be earned, and he was willing to put in the time and effort to do just that. The tension between his past and present was ever present, but it also served as a reminder of how far he had come. Isabel, observing Rodrigo's efforts, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had always believed that people were capable of change, but seeing Rodrigo's transformation firsthand reaffirmed her faith in that belief. She knew that he was not yet the man he could be, but she also saw the determination in his eyes, the willingness to confront his flaws and strive for something better. The suspense of whether Rodrigo could maintain this new path, or if he would falter, was a constant undercurrent in their relationship. But Isabel chose to support him, offering guidance when needed and giving him the space to grow on his own terms. Rodrigo's relationship with Isabel continued to evolve, shifting from one of mere convenience to one of mutual respect and understanding. He no longer saw her as just a means to an end, but as someone who had become an integral part of his life. The walls he had built around himself, the defenses that had once protected his ambition, were slowly crumbling, leaving him open to emotions he had long suppressed. This vulnerability was both terrifying and exhilarating, as Rodrigo began to realize that true happiness couldn't be found in wealth or status alone. The drama of his internal struggle was mirrored in his interactions with Isabel, as he navigated the complexities of this new, more genuine connection. As Rodrigo embraced his new role, he also started to address the relationships he had neglected or damaged in his pursuit of success. He reached out to those he had wronged, offering apologies where they were due and making amends wherever possible. This was perhaps the most difficult part of his journey, as it forced him to confront the pain he had caused others and the damage he had done to his own integrity. The suspense of whether these relationships could be salvaged and whether Rodrigo could truly move past his mistakes weighed heavily on him. But with Isabel's quiet support and his own determination, he began to see glimmers of hope. Rodrigo's transformation wasn't just about changing his behavior, it was about changing his mindset and his approach to life. He began to find joy in the small things, spending time in the garden with Isabel, sharing quiet moments over a cup of coffee, or simply enjoying the peace that came from a day's hard work. These were the moments that had eluded him in his previous life, when he was consumed by the relentless pursuit of wealth and power. Now he began to understand the true meaning of contentment, a feeling that came not from external validation, but from within. The tension between his old desires and his newfound sense of peace was a constant reminder of the journey he was on. Isabel's influence on Rodrigo was profound, but it was his own willingness to change that drove his transformation. He realized that he had been given a second chance, a chance to rebuild his life on a foundation of honesty, respect, and love. This realization brought with it a sense of responsibility, not just to Isabel, but to himself. Rodrigo knew that he could never undo the mistakes of his past, but he could learn from them and use those lessons to build a better future. The suspense of what this future might hold was both exciting and daunting, as Rodrigo prepared to step into a new chapter of his life. The final stages of Rodrigo's transformation were marked by a growing sense of peace and fulfillment. He no longer felt the need to prove himself through material success or social status. Instead, he found satisfaction in the relationships he had rebuilt and the person he was becoming. Rodrigo knew that the journey was far from over, that there would be challenges ahead, but he was no longer afraid of what the future might bring. The suspense of the unknown had become a source of motivation rather than fear, as Rodrigo embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. Rodrigo's new beginning was not without its difficulties, but it was also filled with hope. He had learned that life was not a straight path, but a series of twists and turns that required constant adjustment and growth. The suspense of what lay around the next corner was no longer something to dread, but something to look forward to, as it represented the potential for further growth and discovery. Rodrigo was ready to face whatever challenges came his way, confident in the knowledge that he had the strength and support to overcome them. And so, Rodrigo's journey of redemption and renewal reached a new beginning. The man who had once been driven by greed and ambition had found a new purpose in life, one that was centered on love, respect, and the pursuit of genuine happiness. The suspense of what the future held was no longer a source of anxiety, but of anticipation, as Rodrigo looked forward to the life he was building with Isabel by his side. The final act of his transformation was not an ending, but the start of something beautiful and enduring, a testament to the power of change and the possibility of new beginnings. As you've journeyed through Rodrigo's story, one thing becomes clear: life has a way of teaching us lessons in the most unexpected ways. Rodrigo's transformation wasn't just about changing his circumstances, it was about changing his very essence. The man who once valued wealth above all else discovered that true richness lies in the integrity of one's character and the authenticity of one's relationships. Now I want to ask you, are you chasing after something that might not bring you the happiness you think it will? Have you ever stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's a deeper lesson waiting for you, one that could change your life forever? If Rodrigo's journey has shown us anything, it's that the pursuit of superficial goals often leads to empty victories. But when we shift our focus to what truly matters, love, respect, and self-growth, we find a fulfillment that no amount of money can buy. So, what are you willing to change in your life today? What steps can you take to ensure that your future isn't just successful, but meaningful as well? Think about it, because the answers to these questions could be the key to unlocking a richer, more satisfying life. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We've got plenty more stories and lessons like Rodrigo's that could help you navigate the twists and turns of your own journey. Remember, life is full of surprises, and the lessons we learn along the way can make all the difference. Don't miss out. Stay with us, and let's continue to grow together.